progress in Gaza ceasefire talks despite Hamas flexibility. 2 killed in Donetsk after Ukrainian shelling. Good afternoon and Salam Malaysia Madani. I'm Renee Fong and you are watching World Today. There has been no progress in the Gaza ceasefire talks despite the Palestinian freedom fighter group showing flexibility. Hamas official Osama Hamdan said Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was placing obstacles hindering both parties from reaching an agreement and that he is not interested in releasing Israeli hostages. Speaking in a news conference held in Beirut, Hamdan added that the occupation government is still evading and negotiations are stuck in a vicious circle. Furthermore, Egyptian and Qatari efforts backed by the United States have so far failed to achieve a ceasefire. While Hamas wants any ceasefire agreement to secure an end to the Israeli military offensive, Israel prefers a prisoners for hostage release deal, refusing to commit to ending its military campaign. The Palestinian Health Ministry in Gaza stated that Israeli bombardment continued to target areas across the Palestinian enclave, killing 62 people in the past 24 hours. Overall, more than 33,037 Palestinians have been killed and 75,668 others injured in Israel's military offensive on Gaza since 7th October. Denis Pushilin, Russia-backed head of Ukraine's Donetsk region, said 2 people had been killed there on Thursday by Ukrainian shelling. He said the incident also left 9 others wounded. Overall, Russian installed officials said a total of 6 civilians were killed on Thursday in Ukrainian attacks on Russian-controlled parts of southern and eastern Ukraine. A Russian official in Kherson region, Andrei Alexenko, said 2 people died in a village where 1 drone struck a car and a second drone was fired at a passenger who had managed to crawl away from the vehicle. He said a separate attack killed 2 members of a repair crew that was working to restore mobile communications. Another person was in hospital in critical condition. Both Russia and Ukraine deny targeting civilians in the war that has already entered its 3rd year, with no clear resolution expected anytime soon. The United Nations Human Rights Monitoring Mission said in February that more than 10,000 civilians had been killed in Ukraine and nearly 20,000 were wounded. United States Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen arrived in China's southern factory hub of Guangzhou on Thursday with a tough message to Chinese officials. The subject was that China is producing too much of everything, especially clean energy goods, and the world cannot absorb it. The U.S. claims China is unleashing a flood of electric vehicles, or EVs, batteries, solar panels, semiconductors and other manufactured goods onto global markets, the result of years of massive government subsidies and weak demand at home. Global prices for many goods are tanking, pressuring producers in other countries. In a series of meetings with top Chinese economic officials from Friday through Monday, Yellen will seek to convey her view that the excess production is unhealthy for China. Yellen will also emphasize that there is a growing drumbeat of concern about it in the US, Europe, Japan, Mexico, and other major economies. A senior US Treasury official said Yellen would explain that if there are trade actions around the world that arises, it is not an anti-China movement, but instead a response to their policies. British billionaire Joe Lewis left court on Thursday after a United States judge ordered him to pay a $5 million fine and serve 3 years of probation for sharing illegal stock tips. As a result, the 87-year-old founder of an investment firm will avoid prison after prosecutors and his attorneys urged leniency. His well-known face was hidden by surrounding guards and garments as he made his way back into his black van before it pulled off. U.S. District Judge Jessica Clark in Manhattan sentenced Lewis, who pleaded guilty in January to 1 count of conspiracy and 2 counts of securities fraud. Federal sentencing guidelines had called for a prison sentence of up to 2 years, but Clark was not bound by them. Prosecutors said the Tavistock Group founder, whose family trust controls a majority of London's Tottenham Hotspur football team, passed inside information on his portfolio companies to 2 of his private pilots, as well as friends, personal assistants, and romantic partners. According to prosecutors, those tips enabled the recipients of the information to reap millions of dollars in profit. The North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO, foreign ministers celebrated the 75th anniversary of their alliance on Thursday with cake and marching bands, while its Secretary General reminded the United States that it needed its allies more than ever as the Ukraine war enters its 3rd year. Meeting for a second day in Brussels, the ministers marked the signing in Washington on 4th April 1949 of the North Atlantic Treaty that established the transatlantic political and military alliance. Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said NATO not only strengthens Europe's security, but also makes North America stronger through European allies' own militaries, intelligence gathering, and diplomacy. NATO began with 12 members from North America and Europe, founded in response to growing fears that the Soviet Union posed a military threat to European democracies. At its heart is the concept of collective defense, the idea that an attack on one member is considered an attack on all. 75 years on, it has 32 members and has retaken a central role in world affairs, leading European governments to view Moscow once more as a major security threat. Up next, Denmark fires defense minister over failure in administrative responsibilities. A Danish frigate deployed to the Red Sea as part of a United States-led operation suffered malfunctioning of its weapon systems when attacked by drones operated by Houthi rebels last month. The captain announced the matter on Thursday as the ship returned to Denmark after being recalled early from the mission. The vessel's captain and commanding officer, Sune Lund, said that there was some system failure that occurred during the operation. Despite the malfunction, however, the frigate Iver Woodfelt shot down 4 drones while at sea. The incident led to Denmark firing its chief of defense, Flemming Lemfter, on Wednesday after he had failed to report the malfunctioning. Defense Minister Troels Lund Poulsen said that he no longer has trust in Lemfter following his responsibility. In a separate incident, an activated but faulty missile launcher on another Danish Navy vessel docked next to Iverwoodfelt on Thursday triggered the closure of airspace and shipping traffic in the Great Belt Strait. The location where the incident took place is one of the world's busiest sea lanes and the main maritime access to the Baltic Sea. Voting began on Thursday in Kuwait's first election since Sheikh Meshal Al-Ahmad Al-Sabah assumed power late last year. The new emir is determined to push through economic reforms after protracted deadlock between appointed governments and elected parliaments. Sheikh Meshal strongly criticized the National Assembly and the government in his first speech before Parliament after taking office in December, saying they were harming the interests of the country and its people. His reform-minded approach with scant tolerance for political bickering seemingly aims to propel the small Gulf Arab state to catch up with neighbors in weaning its economy off oil. The polls opened at noon in the election, the fourth since December 2020, and will close at midnight local time. Kuwait bans political parties and candidates run as independents. Sheikh Meshal, 83, succeeded his late brother Sheikh Nawaf Al Ahmad in December and dissolved parliament on 15th February, less than 2 months into his tenure. 200 candidates were competing in Thursday's election, the lowest number in over 5 decades. The number of voters was estimated at 835,000. Kuwait consists of 5 electoral districts, each with 10 lawmakers. Candidates who secure the top 10 positions in each district win parliamentary seats. The International Monetary Fund (IMF) confirmed yesterday that its current managing director is the only candidate to lead the global financial institution once her first term expires later this year. The IMF said in a statement that its current managing director, Kristalina Georgieva, has been nominated, with the period for submitting nominations closing 1 day earlier. The announcement makes Georgieva's return to the top job at the IMF almost certain once her term ends on 30th September. Under a controversial decades-old agreement between Europe and the United States, the International Monetary Fund has historically been led by European and the World Bank by a U.S. citizen. This unwritten arrangement was reaffirmed last year when the Biden administration nominated Ajay Banga, an Indian-born, naturalized U.S. citizen, to run the World Bank, which sits just across the street from the IMF in Washington. The IMF said its executive board hopes to complete the selection process by the end of April. Angola's Constitutional Court on Thursday quashed a 5-year sentence that had been handed to the son of ex-President Jose Eduardo dos Santos for embezzlement. Judges of the top court in the capital Luanda declared the 2020 conviction of Jose Filomeno dos Santos, 46, who has been serving his sentence under house arrest, void as unconstitutional. The verdict breached the principles of legality, adversarial proceedings, a fair and consistent judgment, and the rights of the defense. The decision published on Thursday represents a major victory for the family of the late leader, which has long complained of being the target of a politically motivated campaign. It was not immediately clear whether the young Dos Santos, nicknamed Zenu, would walk free or a new trial will be held. Zenu was one of the first members of the former presidential family to be prosecuted as part of an anti-graft campaign led by President João Lourenço since he came to power in 2017. In 2019, he was accused of trying to embezzle up to $1.5 billion from the oil-rich country's sovereign wealth fund, which he oversaw from 2013 to 2018. He was then charged with stealing $500 million from the fund and transferring it to a foreign bank account. Perus Congress on Thursday voted twice against formally debating the start of a process to impeach President Dina Boluarte under fire for possessing and wearing expensive jewelry, including luxury Rolex watches. Boluarte is facing a probe for alleged illicit enrichment by improperly acquiring the high-end watches. She has denied all wrongdoing, but the case was further complicated this week when the probe expanded into bank deposits of unknown origin and other jewelry, including a valuable Cartier bracelet. There have been fierce protests over the years against Boluarte by supporters of her democratically elected predecessor, Pedro Castillo, who was impeached in December 2022 for trying to close Congress and later jailed. Peru's politics are highly polarized, and the constitution allows presidents to be impeached for moral incapacity, a subjective measure that's been used to impeach several former leaders. However, approval to launch the process was unlikely, as conservative and right-wing lawmakers had signaled support for the president, saying they wanted to avoid a major political crisis. Dozens of Bolivian nationals who were detained on a cruise ship in Barcelona with false travel documents and invalid visas left the ship on Thursday. The Bolivian government's regional delegation in Catalonia said the 69 Bolivians, including families with children, were taken to the port transit area. The cruise ship MSC Harmonia, which began its journey in Brazil, arrived in Barcelona early on 2nd April and was scheduled to leave for Corsica off the French coast later that day. It was detained after authorities discovered the Bolivian nationals' visas were invalid. According to a Spanish Interior Ministry source, they were also carrying false documents. The Bolivians denied access to Spanish territory will be taken to another boat while authorities process their cases to decide on potential deportations or granting of asylum. The case could signal a lesser-known irregular migration route from Latin America to Europe. Swiss-Italian operator MSC Cruises, which was responsible for checking the travel documents, said in a statement it would collaborate in the investigation. Still to come in sports, Chelsea teen star Palmer strikes thrice to stun Manchester United. Cole Palmer scored twice deep into stoppage time to complete a hat-trick as Chelsea stunned Manchester United 4-3 yesterday, all but ending their hopes of qualifying for next season's Champions League. Erik ten Hag's men appeared set for a vital win after storming back from 2-0 down to lead 3-2 in a breathless game containing a combined 47 shots. But boyhood United fan Palmer turned the game on its head, levelling from the penalty spot in the 100th minute and then netting the winner moments later in a frantic end to the game at Stamford Bridge. The former Manchester City player has now scored 19 goals for Chelsea since he switched clubs on 1st September. United were still ahead at 99 minutes and 17 seconds, the latest a side has ever led in a Premier League match. They have gone on to lose. The bitter defeat leaves 6th place United 11 points off 4th place Aston Villa with just 8 games to play and facing a season outside Europe's elite club competition. But it lifts Mauricio Pochettino's side to 10th spot in the table, keeping them in the hunt for an European place after an inconsistent season. The bitter defeat leaves Ten Hag under mounting pressure at United in just his second season in charge, with new co-owner Jim Ratcliffe yet to decide whether to stick or twist. Their only remaining hope of silverware is in the FA Cup. They face Coventry in the semi-finals later this month for the right to face City or Chelsea in the final at Wembley. Meanwhile, Alexis McAllister fired Liverpool back to the top of the Premier League as the Argentine's wonder goal inspired a tense 3-1 win against lowly Sheffield United. Jurgen Klopp's side were growing anxious after Darwin Núñez's early opener was cancelled out by Conor Bradley's own goal in the second half. McAllister eased the nerves around Anfield with a brilliant finish from the edge of the area, and Cody Gakpo sealed the points in the closing moments. On a potentially pivotal evening in the title race, Liverpool moved 2 points clear of second place Arsenal with 8 games left for each of the 3 teams involved in a gripping battle for supremacy. Arsenal's 2-0 win against Luton had knocked Liverpool out of pole position on Wednesday, with third place Manchester City's 4-1 road of Aston Villa keeping them in the hunt. But Liverpool, unbeaten in their last 28 home league matches, are now a step closer to being crowned English champions for a record equaling 20 of time and first since 2020. Klopp's treble chasers have already won the League Cup and face Atalanta in the Europa League quarterfinals as they eye a memorable farewell for the German in his last season. However, they will have to improve on this erratic display to hold off Arsenal and champion City, who are 3 points adrift of Liverpool. Liverpool head to Manchester United in the league on Sunday for a crucial clash with their bitter rivals. Spanish tennis superstar Rafael Nadal withdrew from the upcoming Monte Carlo Masters on Thursday, saying that he was not physically ready for competition. The 37-year-old, who has said he expects to retire after the 2024 season, returned to competition in Brisbane in January after almost a year sidelined with a hip flexor injury, but has not played an ATP event since. He lost to Jordan Thompson in the quarterfinals of the Brisbane Open. The Spaniard, however, did face Carlos Alcaraz in an exhibition match in Las Vegas last month. Nadal began 2023 with an injury to his left leg that caused him to miss out, like a domino effect, one by one, on numerous prestigious tournaments such as Doha, Indian Wells, Monte Carlo, Barcelona, Mutua Madrid Open and Rome. The former world #1 has slipped to 649th in the latest ATP rankings. Nonetheless, the 14-time Roland Garros champion is excited to play one more time in the court Philippe Chatrier, a place where he has experienced the most important moments of his career. The Monte Carlo Masters begins on Sunday. Nadal has won the event a record 11 times, with his last victory coming in 2018. Danielle Collins added to her hot streak with a pair of wins at the Charleston Open on Thursday, including a win over world number 6 Ons Jabeur. The Miami Open champion now has 10 straight wins under her belt as she marches into the quarterfinals in Charleston, where she'll face either Elina Svitolina or Elise Mertens. Collins kicked off the day's sessions with a 6-3, 1-6 and 6-3 win over Jabeur of Tunisia before coming back to beat compatriot Sloane Stephens 6-2, 6-2 in the night session. Fellow American Jessica Pegula also advanced to the quarterfinals with a straightforward 6-2, 6-2 win over Magda Linette of Poland. Next up for the #1 seed is Victoria Azarenka of Belarus. Things did not go to plan or yet another American #10 seed Emma Navarro, who lost to Romanian Jacqueline Christian in 3 sets, 6-3, 7-5 and 6-1.
Games.
Meanwhile, in Portugal, Casper Ruud advanced to the quarterfinals of the Estoril Open on Thursday along with Hubert Hurkacz and Martin Fucsovics. Ruud, the top seed, began his title defense with a comfortable 6-1, 6-2 victory over Dutchman Botik van der Zandschulp. The Norwegian will now play Fucsovics after the Hungarian upset 7-seeded Gael Monfils of France 1-6, 6-1, 7-5 in an epic battle of the grid. Poland's Hurkacz won his first clay court match of the season to advance over British qualifier Jan Chwanski 7-6, 6-4. Home favourite Nuno Borges also reached the last 8 as he beat Lorenzo Musetti in straight sets 7-6 and 6-3. The Women's Tennis Association, WTA, on Thursday announced that the season-ending finals will be held in Saudi Arabia's capital, Riyadh, from 2024 to 2026. The announcement ended months of speculation and marked the Gulf country's latest foray into the sport. Riyadh will host the season finale, replacing last year's hosts, Cancun, Mexico. Talk that the event could be shifted to Saudi Arabia had intensified after the men's ATP Tour said last August its next-gen finals would be held in Jeddah from 2023 to 2027. The WTA said Riyadh was selected following a comprehensive evaluation process over several months, which has included assessment of multiple bids from different regions and engagement with players. Saudi Arabia has invested heavily in sports like soccer, Formula One and golf in the last few years, while critics accuse the kingdom of using its public investment fund to sports wash its human rights record. The country denies accusations of human rights abuses and says it protects its national security through its laws. The hosts of this week's Japan Grand Prix is hoping a calendar shift to one of the country's peak tourist seasons and cheap currency may attract more international visitors to an event that traditionally has drawn a mainly domestic audience. Japan's weak yen, currently at multi-decade low against the US dollar, is also driving a rebound in tourists following strict travel curbs imposed during the COVID-19 pandemic. The Formula One race has been moved from its usual autumn slot during the typhoon season when heavy rains have marred the spectacle in the past. The event now coincides with the peak of Japan's world-renowned cherry blossom or sakura bloom. The race at the Suzuka track, a favorite among drivers due to its technical twists and high-speed straights, drew its biggest crowd in nearly 2 decades last year, driven partly by a bounce in overseas visitors. An estimated 40,000 tickets were sold to international visitors last year, a 4-fold jump since the years immediately before the pandemic. In order to promote the race internationally, the circuit has for the first time began posting English language content on social media, offering tips for travel and sightseeing. The Aquatics Centre, one of only 2 facilities being built in the Paris region for the Paris 2024 Olympics, is officially ready and was inaugurated yesterday. According to architect Laurie Myriot, more than 4,000 solar panels on the roof will help heat the pool water up to 27 degrees, while the building's concave wooden beam structure limits the space that needs to be heated and ventilated. With 5,000 seats for the public, 2,000 of which are removable, the site is expected to host the artistic swimming and diving events, as well as the qualifying stages of the water polo tournament. The Aquatic Centre's pool was first filled with water in mid-December 2023. It contains more than 5,500 cubic meters of water, and after several filling tests, the pool was definitely filled in February. This site is the Paris Olympics' most expensive structure, with a budget of 151 million euros. Its handover to Paris 2024 became official on 4th April during the inauguration of the site, as the keys were given to Paris 2024 head Tony Estanguet in the presence of French President Emmanuel Macron. And that's it for World Today this time around. In our top story, no progress in Gaza ceasefire talks despite Hamas flexibility. Till next time, I'm Renee Fong. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. RTM, teman setia Anda. Have a wonderful afternoon.